and welcome to our special coverage of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I'm Ladi Akeridoluale. The headlines. Russia claims Belgorod province attack by Ukrainian forces. Ukraine says Russia's military offensive in Donbas region has begun, and street orchestra performs to boost locals' morale in Dnipro. Let's begin with news out of Russia itself, where the governor of its Belgorod region says one person has been wounded in shelling originating from, quote, the Ukrainian side. Russia's RIA reported that Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov said on his Telegram channel that the Ukrainian military has shelled the village of Golovchino near the border. Earlier on in April, Mr. Gladkov had accused Ukraine of attacking and setting fire to an oil depot in the region, which injured 8 people. Ukraine has denied any responsibility for the attack. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russian forces have launched a new offensive along most of Ukraine's eastern flank, and the Battle of Donbas has now begun. Ukraine's army has been bracing for a new Russian assault on its eastern flank since Moscow withdrew its forces from near Kyiv and from Ukraine's north late last month in order to focus on an assault in the Ukrainian region of Donbas. Russia has been bulking up its forces in the east, using troops that it pulled out of Ukraine's north and neighboring Belarus, a close Russian ally. Russia's reinforcements have set the stage for a protracted battle that military analysts say is certain to inflict heavy losses on both sides as the Russians try to encircle Ukraine's fighters dogging to defend the Donbas region.
We can now say that Russian forces have started the Battle of Donbas, for which they have long prepared. A very large part of the entire Russian army is now focused on this offensive. Ukraine's ascension to the European Union is an integral part of strategic vision. And in this context, today a historic event took place. We are going through one of the stages before joining the EU. We submitted answers to a questionnaire received from Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, and Josep Borrell, Head of European Diplomacy. Each country that joined the European Union went through the same procedure with the questionnaire. The only difference is that it took them years and a little more than a week for us. We will send the second part of the answers in the nearest time, and we hope that the European resolution in response will be quick. The Russian army is not slowing down the use of missiles against Ukraine, although it should have realized that it will be extremely difficult for Russia to restore the missile stocks facing even existing sanctions. Without imports, they can't do even that. And when all the loopholes used to circumvent sanctions are closed, and when even tough sanctions are imposed, restoring Russia's missile capabilities will be unrealistic. That is, Russian missile strikes lead to only one thing: missile self-demilitarization of the Russian Federation.
Російська армія не збавляє темпу використання ракет проти.
Meanwhile, Ukraine's defense ministry spokesman Alexander Mochuzhenko says Russia had regrouped troops and was preparing the offensive to connect Donetsk and Luhansk regions with Crimea. During the briefing held in Kiev, Mr. Mochuzhenko said the situation in the besieged southeastern port city of Mariupol was extremely difficult, but that the city had not been taken under full control by the Russian forces. Earlier, Russia said it had launched mass strikes overnight on the Ukrainian military and associated military targets using its air force, missile forces, artillery, and air defense systems to hit hundreds of targets in Ukraine. Ukraine called for Russia to facilitate a humanitarian corridor for evacuees from Mariupol and one from the Azovstal steel plant, that is the city's largest significant area of Ukrainian resistance. 2 British fighters captured in Ukraine by Russian forces appeared on Russian state TV and asked to be exchanged for an ally of President Vladimir Putin, who has been held by Ukrainian authorities. The 2 captured Britons, Sean Payner and Aiden Iceland, spoke to the camera after being prompted by an unidentified man, but it's not clear how freely they were able to speak. The footage was broadcast on Russian state television channels Rossiya 1. The men both asked Prime Minister Boris Johnson to exchange them for pro-Russian Ukrainian politician Viktor Medvedchuk. An unidentified man can be seen showing the two Britons a video appeal on a mobile phone by Mr. Medvedchuk's wife, Oksana, in which he asked for her husband to be swapped for the two British nationals. Both Pina and Arslan had been fighting for the Ukrainian army in the southeastern Ukrainian city of Mariupol, which is now almost entirely under Russian control.
I think Boris needs to listen to what Oksana has said. I remember seeing in the news when Viktor Medvedchuk was arrested for his political affiliations. If Boris Johnson really does care, like he says he does, about British citizens, and he would help pressure Zelensky to do the right thing and return Viktor to his family and return us to our families.
Obviously, I'm Sean Pinner. A lot's gone on over the last 5 or 6 weeks that I'm not fully aware of. Obviously, I understand that Mr. Medvedchuk has been detained, and we look to exchange myself and Aidan Aslin for Mr. Medvedchuk. Obviously, I'd really appreciate your help in this matter and pushing this agenda.
The United States President will convene a meeting of allies to discuss the Ukraine conflict today, and that's according to the White House, after Kiev announced that Russia had launched a major offensive in the east of the country. An official had told the AFP news agency that the meeting is part of their regular coordination with allies and partners in support of Ukraine, without naming who would be included in the video call. The White House said the meeting would also cover efforts to hold Russia accountable. Meanwhile, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is deeply concerned by the continuing attacks on Ukrainian cities, including most recently Lviv, Dnipro, Kharkiv, and Mykolaiv. That's according to a UN spokesperson. Reading the Secretary General's statement at the UN headquarters, Stefan Dujarric noted the attacks are resulting in numerous civilian casualties and destruction in residential areas, as well as civilian infrastructure. Antonio Guterres also reminds all parties that they must take utmost care to exert all necessary efforts and measures to avoid civilian casualties and any damage to residential areas and civilian infrastructure. According to the spokesperson, the Secretary General urged all parties to enact an urgent and immediate humanitarian ceasefire, which will enable the safe and secure functioning of humanitarian corridors, help evacuate civilian residents, and also deliver life-saving humanitarian and medical assistance.
By the continuing attacks on Ukraine. Secretary General is deeply concerned by the continuing attacks on Ukrainian cities across the country, including most recently Lviv, Dnipro, Kharkiv, and Mykolaiv, which are resulting in numerous civilian casualties and the destruction in residential areas as well as civilian infrastructure. The Secretary General is greatly concerned by the by the continuing appalling humanitarian situation in the besieged city of Mariupol, which has been largely destroyed by weeks of unrelenting Russian attacks. The Secretary General reminds all parties that they must take all necessary measures to avoid civilian casualties and any damage to residential areas and civilian infrastructure. The Secretary General strongly urges all parties to enact an urgent and immediate humanitarian ceasefire, which will enable safe and securing functioning of humanitarian corridors to help evacuate residents and also deliver life-saving humanitarian and medical assistance. Genuine negotiations must be given a chance to succeed and to bring a lasting peace. The Secretary General and the UN stands ready to support such efforts.
Upon his return from missions in Ukraine as well as the Russian Federation, the UN's top humanitarian official says that the body does not really know the number of people still caught or blocked and unable to get out of Mariupol. Martin Griffiths, who is the UN Under Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator, noted that the ICRC has made daily efforts to do that, but it's always one side or the other to blame. Mr. Griffiths said he was really impressed by the way Turkey has been able to present itself to both sides as a genuinely valuable and useful host. He said Turkey's wisdom has really been considerable in the way in which they've hosted negotiations, and expressed hope that Turkey would be able to host further talks by the Humanitarian Contact Group. Mr. Griffiths is the first high-level UN official to visit Bucha in Ukraine, accompanied by the Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine, Olha Stefanishyna.
It's always, we don't really know the numbers of the people still caught and blocked and unable to get out from Mariupol. And you would think that the safe evacuation of civilians is something that both sides can agree to, and all sides can agree to, and the world can agree to. And ICRC, as you know, has made daily efforts to do that. But it's always, you know, one side or the other to blame. And of course, it's the middle of a very hot battle. It sounds to me like when the battle is over, and if we can help most of those remaining people out into safety and to have a future with their families, Mariupol itself is going to be a shocking sight. I'm really impressed by the way Turkey has been able to present itself to both sides as a genuinely valuable and useful host to those talks, with all the difficulties, and we saw it since in this last week or so, given what's been happening north of Kyiv.
Let's talk now to David Koshwedo, former student of Lviv National Medical University. He's back in Nigeria after spending 3 years in Lviv, Ukraine. David, nice to have you join us.
Nice to be here. Thank you, sir.
The first thing I want to ask is that I'm sure you've seen the visuals of some of the missiles that have come down on Lviv more recently after you left. Do you still have people you know who are back in Lviv?
Yes, but I'm not sure if they are there at the moment. As at the time I was leaving, I know of 2 people that were still there. It's not as if they didn't want to go, but they felt that they should just stay in Lviv.
Back.
Yeah, I'm keeping in touch with them, but they said they are all right, that everything is fine. But yes, I still have some people there, sir.
Outside of Lviv, in the other places, in Kharkiv, in Cherniv, in Kyiv itself, and then, of course, in the surrounding countries, which is how you got out and got back here to Nigeria, the people who moved, who left Ukraine and went to all those neighboring countries, do you have anyone amongst them? Do you keep in contact with some of them too, those who were with you in Lviv before all of this started?
Oh, yes. I have some friends that they don't want to come back home, and I understand their reason why. Yes, I have some friends in Hungary, some in Poland, but it's what they want to do. I still keep in touch with them, and they're all right, they're all fine. So them outside Ukraine, they are actually very much okay.
You are back here.
Yes, sir.
And as you just said, quite a number of others didn't want to come back. Now you're back here. What has the transition been like for you?
First of all, I want to thank God, but to be honest, it hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy at all because, first of all, I'm in my 4th year. So people think as I'm in my 4th year, I'm meant to know some specific things because I'm meant to be going to the hospital, right, if I was in Ukraine.
You are a medical student,
yes.
Because I need to clarify
Yes,
that.
I am. Yes, sir. So I'm meant to be going to the hospital, right, but because of this whole situation, we are stuck at home. And the time difference too is also a major factor. And also back in Nigeria, it's like I'm having my test, and not even test, but like my classes, and the light goes off. How do I explain to my teachers? Because our teachers, they are also like trying their best because like you heard, like there were missiles on Lviv, and some of them with their families are still there trying to give us information, trying to give us, teach us, right? Because they don't want to because they know how hard medicine is. Because
let me get something clear, because I'm sure, like most of those who are listening to you, you're talking of online classes here.
Yes, sir.
So you're doing your 4th year in medicine online, with teachers who are probably still in Ukraine.
Yes, sir.
Under these circumstances, and you are newly back here, trying to adjust both your body clock and yourself to this.
Yes, sir.
That's what you're talking about. Okay, please go on.
So I said my teachers are back there because majority of them would have been like, oh, let's leave the country, but they decided to stay to help all the students out. And it's not easy. I said I could start having my class and they take the light, and I have to on the generator. I have to apologize to my child that, oh, sorry, it's because there's no light. This is what
happened.
Yes, I've had some of my so I have a group, so I have some of my friends that are Nigerians and Indians, so we are mixed. And some of my Nigerian friends are like, oh, they can't connect for like today's class because their batteries are low, fuel is scarce, and there's no light. So the teacher has to take into consideration that situation. But it's not good for any of us because we obviously want to learn, but the situation has made it that we are just stuck with what we have, sir.
Given that scenario, of course, on the other hand, I'm sure your family was delighted to have you back, even with all the complaints and everything. Them physically seeing you and knowing that you're not at the theater of conflict, you're back home, must have been a pleasant surprise for them, especially with what we then knew others in your position went through when this conflict started. But how difficult has the transition been? I mean, non-academic now, settling back into a routine back here in Nigeria, especially since it wasn't something you planned. It was not something you were supposed to be doing at this point.
Yes, you're right, sir. It wasn't planned at all. As I said, it's been very difficult, not only for me, for so many of my friends. It's like majority of us here left Nigeria at 16. I left 16. So like part of my adult life has been in Ukraine. So I would say at this point, Ukraine I know. And coming back here, it's been, words can express how difficult it has been.
There's been a sea change, I would say. I mean, you've had to go from speaking particular language back to speaking the Nigerian language. Many of the people you hadn't seen in 2, 3, 4 years, all of a sudden you are now seeing them again. And your old friends who you left behind when you left, of course, have grown like you have grown, and maybe you are not even friends with some of them anymore.
I am still close with them, and the point of my friends I haven't seen, my family for 2, 3 years. Yes, I'm very delighted on that situation, but the transition is different because it's like Nigeria it doesn't feel the same again. I don't know how to explain, but it doesn't feel the same again. It feels that everywhere I go to, everything is now expensive. Everything's expensive. I'm expecting this to be this, and I'm like, wow, that so much has changed within a short period of time.
Right.
That supposing I come like maybe 10 years after, that means it's like crazy. So all I can say has been very difficult.
You weren't the only person who returned to Nigeria amongst those who were in Ukraine. I don't know about Lviv National University, but you weren't the only one who returned. Do you guys have like a kind of group that keeps you informed about what's going on back in school and about how others like you who returned are making the adjustment, are finding it, try to make it less crazy than some of you have found it? Is there anything like that, helping each other out?
Oh yeah, we do have. We have various groups, like various student groups. So
right.
The way our school is run is like we have a lot of groups. So, and the good thing is that we are interracial. So I have my Nigerians, Indians, Egyptians in my group. So we try and communicate. We try and keep in touch with them. We also have like a general group for my year, and it's like they just give us little information, but not so much information about like what is going to happen, because my school is like, I said, they're trying to make sure we have the
that education. You conclude the education.
Yeah, even though it's just for this semester, because majority of us don't know what is going to happen, because we are thinking, okay, maybe during the summer everything is going to die down, but
right.
Based on what we are hearing that they even attacked Lviv,
yes.
It's seeming unlikely, and it's like some of us are asking, not like majority are asking for transcripts. It's not if we want to just leave, it's because of the whole situation, and our parents are
anxious to
yes.
get you into other places where you can continue.
Yes, because I know of someone that that he has done his first degree and medicine is what he's doing. And because he can't stop medicine, because like there's also an age barrier. You have to read that, no, I can't start doing medicine again. You have to just like leave it. And boy, it's something he doesn't want to do. But what can we do, sir?
Yes, that's a very good question. What can you do? And I'm going to take a break, and when we come back, I'm going to ask you about that. What can you do, and what are others saying that you can do? So please stay on with us. When we return, the situation in Ukraine's eastern city of Kramatorsk is escalating. That's according to the area's mayor. More details in a moment. Please stay with us. Welcome back. As I said before the break, we're still talking with David Koshedo, a former student of Lviv National Medical University, who's back after 3 years there. So before the break, I was asking about the experience that you and your colleagues who are back have. And before we came back, while we were on the break, you were telling me that you don't have a group, but you know individuals who are in other places other than Lagos. And their experience is somewhat different, possibly from yours. You were telling me about a friend of yours in Enugu, who you speak to.
No, in Abuja, sir.
Oh, is it in Abuja? Okay. So what's that experience like? I mean, that's different from Lagos.
As I was saying, like, I call her, like, every day, but, like, sometimes there's no, like, light. And it's, like, she's just lucky that she has, like, a SIM that she's able to use, like, mobile data.
Okay.
But unlike me, I don't have the SIM.
Okay.
Because of the whole NIN situation. And I tried re-registering, but it didn't still go through. So I tend to use Wi-Fi and on the generator and things like that, sir.
That's okay. So I must let our viewers know, of course, you do have to go to school this morning.
Yeah, I do, sir.
You have classes this morning. So I'll just have one more question, which is the one I was talking about before the break, which is, if the situation remains the way it is, and you alluded to that when you said it does look like even those in Ukraine are thinking that this might go on for longer than they anticipated, would you be thinking of staying on here, or if you get a transcript, would you think of going somewhere else in Europe?
First of all, the curriculum, I feel they are different. What Nigeria would teach, it's not probably a fourth year, maybe medical student in Nigeria, it's not probably a fourth year medical student in any other country. Okay. There will be obviously some differences. Right. So as for me, my parents have been looking far and wide, but first of all, it's like the cost, because it's like the reason why most people go to Ukraine is, first of all, Ukraine it's on a high level, but the cost is
it's deeply discounted.
Yes, and people go there and it's very good, but looking at other countries, maybe the neighboring country, it's like ×3, ×4 of the current situation, and it's not like some people can't afford it, right? And like at this point, we don't know what to do or where to turn to. So that's why some people are thinking like that. It's like, what is the next step? And some people don't really know what they are going to do.
Wow. David, I'm glad to see you flesh and bones in Nigeria. I'll let you go to your class, and then later we'll invite you back at some point to see how you're making this transition, and if by that time the plans have become more concrete. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
This morning. The mayor of Kramatorsk says the situation in the city is escalating. Yesterday, 2 Russian rockets hit near a residential area, but without casualties. The attack damaged windows on a nearby apartment building and left 2 large smoldering craters in the ground. Russia had said it had launched mass strikes overnight on the Ukrainian military and associated military targets using its air force, missile forces, artillery, and air defense systems to hit hundreds of targets across its southern neighbor. The Russian Defense Ministry says those strikes took place in Kharkiv, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Dnipropetrovsk regions, and in the port of Mykolaiv, and that the Russian Air Force had launched strikes against 108 areas where it said Ukrainian forces and armor were concentrated.
According to information and according to that what we can see and hear from militaries, so the situation is escalating around the city, and the most 2 dangerous directions to Kramatorsk, it's the north direction from Izium and northeast from direction Kreminaya. We are attacked by rockets every night, every day. You heard from these rocket attacks, and during last 2-3 days, it were every day 1 or 2 rockets flying to Kramatorsk. But we are lucky that during last 2 days, it were no targets they have reached.
With a realignment of military strategy on both sides of the war in Ukraine, let's talk to security expert Timitokbe Olodo, who joins us from Kent in England. Thank you so much for your time. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Now let's start with the Ukrainian side. I mean, if everything we have heard is to be believed, the Ukrainians have stopped being defensive. They've gone on the offensive. They themselves are now attacking targets in Russia. Would you say that that is viable going forward, especially since they seem to be outnumbered on the ground in terms of military personnel, launching new attacks on new fronts while you are also having to defend a major offensive? Is it viable, do you think?
It depends on the amount of weapons and support they get from their Western allies. As you know, almost close to, I think, $800 million of equipment is going to be shipped from the United States, not to talk of what the British are doing and other NATO countries. So when you look at it from that perspective, I've been wondering, and I know many analysts have been concerned that, Ukrainians have not even tried to take the battle away from their doorstep into Russia to let Russia feel at least a bit of the pain. Because if we're saying that there's a news blockout in Russia, once they start hitting Russia assets, that news will actually have to leak out one way or the other. But saying that, we still need to understand that we're talking about Russia here, who launched overnight over 1,260, attacked at least 1,260 infrastructures or targets within Ukraine. And the Ukraine president have actually come out to say over 30% of their infrastructure have been destroyed. So we don't know how far this is going to go. And with the new offensive by Russia, into the east, which is mainly the Russian-speaking aspect of Ukraine, the whole game is wide open because the Ukrainians have said that they're not going to let Russia stay on their territory, and Russia is insisting that that territory is going to be carved out. So what are we going to see after post the war, if we want to be looking at it from that perspective? Is it going to be a guerrilla warfare? Is it that Russians will face the same fate that they faced in Afghanistan? Those are questions that many analysts are plodding over and looking into the history book to try and determine how this game is going to continue.
Let's flip the coin and look at it from the Russian perspective. Now, as you pointed out, that attacks are now going into Russia. If indeed what we are hearing this morning are to be believed, the Ukrainians are now taking the battle to Russia. At the same time, Russia, as you've just pointed out, is launching this major new offensive in the Donbas region. And if the numbers that we have been told are anything to go by, there may be anything like 100,000, 120,000 troops, Russian troops, that is involved in this. And of course, there's the added advantage that this is the Russian-speaking part of Ukraine, and the area where Ukraine already has lost effective control to the Russians. Is this going to probably be any easier for the Russians, considering that they've suffered some setbacks in the other areas that they had gone to, particularly Kiev and a couple of others?
Yeah, I think from the onset, there was a miscalculation by the Russians in terms of their belief that they will be able to just stroll through, through Ukraine and with people standing on the roadside to welcome them. Now they are shifting their strategy to go into the Russian-speaking area. And it is important for viewers to know that this is an area where there's been conflict for at least close to 8 years. And this particular area have always seen themselves as being part of Russia. based on that, because nothing is certain in war, based on that, it's more likely to say 70% that Russia will have much victory in that particular area. And of course, they have the military might and they have the people in that area who, align themselves with Russia. So it's much easier. It's not like when they're trying to go into the other part of Ukraine where citizens have been given weapons. We've not heard so far, and I stand to be corrected, that Ukraine have been able to distribute weapons to people in that particular area to fight the Russians. So that again make us to come or infer or draw a conclusion that Russians might more or less have a better success, military success in that particular area. The question then is, would that help to ease down the tension? The fact is NATO is getting stronger because of some of the rhetoric conversation coming out of Russia that, warning Finland and the other countries not to join NATO. So the question is, this war might be stopped maybe through a peaceful negotiation once Russia managed to capture that particular area and carve it out. The issue then is, what will Ukraine do? Will they continue with the guerrilla warfare? And will NATO actually back that? Because what they're going to do is militarize that particular area that we're talking about. So we are moving back into the Cold War, whether we like it or not, from the look of things.
There are two things, of course, from what you just said. Now, the first is that Vladimir Zelensky has said they will not give up any inch of a Ukrainian territory. The second is that overnight, Ukraine submitted a questionnaire, it is said, to the EU in response to a request earlier made, and that they're hoping that in short order they will become a candidate for the European Union membership. Now, people have pointed out that this is the EU we are talking about, not NATO. That because NATO is the military alliance, the EU is economic, basically. But at this stage of conflict, do you think that this fine line between what is economic and what is military will really matter to the Russians, especially given the fact that they don't seem to have achieved the objectives that they set out at the beginning?
I think if we could read the body language of the Russians, I think it's the NATO aspect of it that they are more concerned about and not the Europeans. At least they sell oil, gas to the Europeans. So, even Ukraine joins them or not, it doesn't change anything. I think Ukraine definitely will need to join the European Union, which one way or the other. But from an emotional perspective, there's more possibility that they will join the European Union if they are allowed to join it, so that at least their loss could be absorbed. Ukraine will need, many years to be able to recover from the damage that has been inflicted on them by the Russians armed forces. And we knew from history that even the UK government, the UK as a country was still paying money to the Americans, for the Second World War. So Ukraine is going to be in debt. The only way to be able to absorb that debt is if they are part of Europe, so that everything they own, their whole place, their development will be part of Europe. I will actually recommend that if I'm actually advising them. That would be the best way forward. The NATO aspect is going to be a bit dicey, but if they do that, because look at our young ones that have gone to Ukraine, that are in 4th year, 3rd year, how would they can't go back to that place. That place is not a place for them to go back to. And I'm hoping that the Nigerian government, as they're listening to your program, will actually come together and look at how they could help these youths, give them scholarship to be able to go to other countries, because the curriculum might be quite different from the Nigerian one. But that aside, I think that might be the best option for Ukraine to join European Union, so that their debt and all their development might be taken over by Europe. And if that continent takes over, or that particular bloc take over, their development might be much faster than if they go it alone, borrowing money for every part of the world.
Indeed, one can only hope that all of this will come to pass properly. I want to thank you very much, Mr. Temitope Olodo, who joins us from Kent virtually today. Thank you for your time and for your perspective.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen plans to meet with Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal during the week's big meetings of the global economic leaders in Washington. The war in Ukraine will take center stage at the International Monetary Fund and World Bank meetings. Today, Ms. Yellen will convene a panel of finance ministers, the international development banks, and other institutions to talk about how to use resources to address food insecurity. Experts have raised concerns about global food shortages as Kiev and Moscow are important food suppliers. Let's talk to Laddie Williams, as usual at this time on the show. Laddie.
Good morning.
Oil prices.
Yeah.
I know that you have this look on your face that tends to suggest that here we go again.
Here we go again.
Oil prices have risen as investors are fretting over tighter supplies. It appears as if the supplies are getting tighter.
Right.
Libya has a force majeure now because of political disagreement. Saudi Arabia is trying to pump everything it can pump out.
Exactly.
But the demand is...
So they're more like countering each other at this point. Yeah, but at the end of the day, we're seeing, disruptions to supply, with this attack on Libya's facility. It's they've stopped the employees from actually, working, which is, stopping production of oil back in Libya. So all of this is tending towards, disruption of supply of oil at this point. And even though we're seeing, Shanghai, they're trying to open up, at this point, even though they've been, locked down for a while now.
Now that's related to COVID-19.
Yeah, that's related to COVID-19. But now they're, starting to open up. So China being the biggest, oil importer, we're seeing demand, come back. That's supposed to at least, help the prices stabilize at this point. But, with this supply disruption, that again, that fuels, the oil prices, as long as Russia is still, impacted by, most of these sanctions. And we're seeing this disruption, coming from Libya. At the end of the day, we're seeing prices actually react to that, and they're rising, at this point. So at the end of the day, it's good news. Shanghai is opening up at this point so that demand can actually come up, and that can, somewhat, bring the prices down
a little,
at
but
this
the
point.
dollar itself as a currency.
Yeah, the dollar is strengthening, at this point.
That's
and
bad news for those who are holding other currencies.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, all of this is, coming together and, impacting, the oil price. We've seen the dollar strengthen to a basket of, other currencies. It went up by about 0.1%, and that's actually, once the dollar starts to strengthen, it impacts, other markets, and other investors holding other currencies. So at the end of the day, the markets are very volatile, at this point. Everything is just, creating more volatility as we see it.
Now, complicating all of this and still talking about oil is that Germany, which we have talked about in earlier this week, last week and the week before, which is particularly vulnerable to any talk about boycott of Russian oil and gas.
Exactly.
You have businesses there and unions of workers now opposing any attempt to boycott Russian oil and gas at this point. And that appears to also be creating a bigger problem for the authorities.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, these businesses are saying, you know what, we cannot do without, Russian gas at this point, because if we go on with this boycott, we'll have to shut down our factories, we'll have to lay off workers. So they're the ones that are going to feel, the bite, of this Russian gas boycott. But they're saying, you know what, we cannot go through with this. This is not realistic. We've had this conversation before that this will not be a fast move. It's going to take time, but they're saying, because they're looking at the body language of the authorities in the EU, and they're like, you know what, we're moving to boycott Russian gas at this point, because at the end of the day, as long as Russia is still selling their gas, they're still going to be able to fund this war. So it's a tough move. It's
really tough.
You're choosing between the devil and the deep blue sea at this point, and the businesses are coming out to say, you know what, we cannot afford.
We don't want the devil.
We don't want
the
this.
deep blue
Yes,
sea.
we'll just keep, buying gas at this point.
Within Russia itself, economic maneuvers are also going on. There's a further rate cut, and there's more spending.
Right. Yeah, we've seen the Russian government now trying to support, the economy at this point, because when the war started, they had to raise rates about 20%, but now they're trying to, cut it down, so that to bring down the cost of borrowing, so that businesses can, go about the business in Russia and, get the funding they need. But at the end of the day, we're seeing the Russian government and the central bank, trying to keep the ruble strong, making all these moves, making sure that there's no capital, outflow, from Russia. And now we're seeing the government looking at, okay, you know what, let's support this economy with some, funds and, bring down the rates. Because at the end of the day, we're seeing inflation go up globally.
Right.
And Russia is not
exempted
left out,
from that,
is not exempt from that. But they're looking at it now that, okay, we're trying to, instead of using, a hawkish policy at this point, let's try and, support the economy. But as we know, the sanctions are biting, really hard. And at the end of the day, we see the government say, you know what, let's try and support, this fragile economy, because at the end of the day, as these sanctions keep growing, these financial sanctions, the economy is going to get tighter, as time goes on. But, in the short term, they're trying
let's try
and support, the economy, in the short term to make sure things don't go.
Then there's the issue of the Russian Bank Association wanting to outlaw non-custodial wallets.
Right.
That has been flummoxed. What's that?
That's where cryptocurrency comes in, and decentralized finance. At the end of the day, when you have a non-custodial wallet, that means you as an individual, you're in control of your funds. You hold the private keys. That means you can do whatever you want with your account. But when it's a custodial wallet, you can do what you want to do with the account. You can send out funds, receive, but you don't control the wallet per se. That means a central body is in control of that wallet, meaning they can maybe freeze or whatever funds
they have to.
you have in there. So we're seeing these banks actually say, you know what, if you're operating, any of these wallets, and it's a non-custodial wallet, and you have funds in there that you've not declared, that will be a big problem. That will put you in problem.
Yeah.
So they say, you know what, let's make sure that most of the individuals here are using custodial wallets, so that if anything happens, if we have to make some moves, on these funds, we can. So with the decentralized nature,
they can't currently do that.
Yes, they can't currently do that. So they're trying to outlaw, most of these decentralized wallets, so that users there cannot, keep funds that they cannot, they can hide, from the government, so that way they escape taxes. So that's another.
That's what that is. We'll have to see how that pans out in the coming days.
Right.
Laddie, thanks for your time. Business Morning and Business Incorporated. Business Morning follows this show, and then Business Incorporated is at 1:30. Laddie and Ini John McQuarrie will be there. But we'll take a break. When we return, the International Olympic Committee claims Russian members are not representatives of their country. Thanks for staying tuned. Welcome back. Let's take a look at some sports. The International Olympic Committee, IOC, has claimed that it has not suspended its Russian members and honorary members, as they are not, quote, representatives of their country in their capacities. Pressure was ramped up on the Lausanne-based organization after Swiss sports minister and Federal Council member Viola Amherd wrote to President Thomas Bach calling for their exclusion. Shamil Tapashev and two-time Olympic pole vault gold medalist Yelena Isinbayeva have served as IOC members since 1996 and 2016, while Vitaly Smirnov and four-time freestyle swimming Olympic champion Alexander Popov are honorary members. The Russian flag features next to all four individuals on the IOC membership list on its website. However, the IOC insists the officials are not playing an active role in meetings. The International Skating Union has reportedly asked national federations whether they believe Russia should be stripped of hosting rights for a Grand Prix of figure skating coming up in November. Russia is currently scheduled to stage the 6th event of the season from November 25th to 27th. Sporting competitions in the short term have been moved from Russia, but no firm time frame has been placed on the measures. Russia, known as a figure skating powerhouse, has already been banned from ISU events, together with athletes and officials from its ally Belarus, in line with recommendations from the IOC. Outside of sports, when Russia's invasion of Ukraine intensified early in March, a 77-year-old grandmother from the eastern town of Severodonetsk packed some of her belongings and rushed to an underground shelter with her 10-year-old grandson. Tamara, an English teacher, now lives in the cramped shelter with 300 other displaced civilians enduring damp conditions with no natural light. She says many people feel sick because of the humidity and cold weather. After 5 weeks in the shelter, all she wants is peace for what she describes as this horrible war to end so she can return to her home. But there is no sign of the end of the conflict. Fighting has instead intensified in the eastern region of Luhansk, where Severodonetsk is located.
I've come to this shelter because of the shooting, because of bombing, because I'm afraid that the flat where I live would be or will be destroyed, and I may die. We have come here in March when it was very cold at night and in the daytime as well, and it's very wet here. So that's why lots of people were ill, lots of people. Coughing and other symptoms and so on and so forth. And the worst thing was that we didn't have enough medicine to cure. So we are given food here twice a day. Mostly it's a donation from some citizens of our town and humanitarian help. I want to live in my home, and I'm missing it. I miss my previous job. I want to work in the garden, in my garden, and I don't have any possibility to do what I've got accustomed to do earlier. We all wish and want and strive for peace. We want this horrible war stop as quick as it possible. Yes, and we desire, of course, for peace, and we hope for peace.
A group of local musicians who formed a street orchestra to boost spirits in war-torn Ukraine have performed for passers-by in Dnipro. The orchestra's conductor Igor Ruzhin said they were playing music in the streets to bring some positivity to people at a difficult time. They entertained locals with several well-known pieces, including music from James Bond films as well as music from Ukraine. Dnipro, a city in central eastern Ukraine with a population of nearly 1 million people, has so far been spared the worst of the fighting that has devastated cities further east and south, such as Mariupol. Music is good for the soul, especially at a time of torment. And it's on that point that we end the show this morning. Thank you for being with us. I'm Ladi Akiridoluale. There's an update at 5 within the world today, so do watch out for that. And the show is back tomorrow at 9 in the morning. Do have yourselves a pleasant Tuesday ahead.